If you look up perspective on Google, it will tell you that perspective is the art of representing three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional surface to give the right impression of their height, width, depth and position in relation to each other. Definition 2 says perspective is a particular attitude towards or way of regarding something, as in a point of view. Now, if as an artist you slavishly follow the rules of perspective in the first definition, then your work will be accurate, and some may marvel at your dexterity and skill, while others might think your work looks like a photograph, or maybe it was drawn by a robot. But if as an artist you blend the two definitions together, then you begin to create something more interesting. Now, if you're very aware of the perspective in an image as a viewer, then the artist is treating perspective as one of the major themes of their work. But if you are unaware of the perspective, then the artist has submerged the technical aspects of perspective, allowing other themes to dominate the image. As an artist gains confidence, they develop their own standpoint, view, or perspective on the world. Now, if you learn about perspective and practice enough, the technical side of perspective becomes second nature, just like riding a bicycle. An artist's technical approach to perspective may not be exactly how the textbook teaches it. Artists take the rules and they bend them and break them to suit their own needs and style. Often an image is fascinating because it doesn't exactly follow the rules of perspective, or it distorts what we expect to see. Before the technical rules of perspective were invented in Western art, perspective involved a hierarchy of importance. The most important person was the biggest. The size of the lesser characters was determined by their religious or political importance, or whether they were paying the artist or not. Paintings were often a collection of scenes jumbled together or placed in windows or tableaux. Now, in this amazing altarpiece by Roger van der Weyden from around about 1450, this is his own personal kind of view of not just the world but heaven and everything else. This over here on the right is the gateway to heaven, and you can see that the perspective is kind of a little bit wonky, and everything is kind of placed in these panels, and each panel is kind of a little painting in itself. And up at the top here is Jesus, who is kind of judging, looking over the whole thing. So he is up at the top and the most important person, and down below is one of the archangels who is measuring out people to see if they were good or bad. And the good go off to the left over to another archangel who's going to meet them and take them off to heaven, and the bad go wandering off to the fires of hell. And you have all the other angels up here. These are bigger, sort of slightly smaller angels, so they're obviously a bit more important than these sort of pink angels here who are just sort of playing their trumpets, so a little bit smaller. And this will be the Mary, Mother of Jesus, and John the Baptist over here. So they're sort of the third most important, probably, or second most important. So they're slightly bigger. If you see, Mary's slightly bigger than the characters behind here. So these will be saints. Saints and archbishops and people, and maybe they're actually painted to look like patrons who have sort of paid for the painting to be done. But this is painted from the perspective of the artist at the time and how he saw life and the world. It was in the early 1400s that Filippo Brunelleschi the first demonstrated the technical aspects of linear perspective, and artists went mad for it. Essentially, linear perspective means that objects appear smaller the further away from the observer that they are. They also become foreshortened, which means that dimensions along the line of sight appear shorter than the dimensions along across the line of sight. Now, if a square is tilted, the length of the top and bottom edges appear to alter. The edge furthest away appears to become shorter, and at the same time the sides stop being vertical and appear to become angled. Now let's look at this in practice. Here's the square, there's a circle drawn on it, and as I drop this edge, this comes nearer to you. If I bring the square closer to the camera, you can see the effect is much more defined, and that's because we've changed the point of view. Also, the circle is now an ellipse because it has been foreshortened too. Now, if you were to continue the lines of the square's sides, they will eventually meet at the vanishing point, which is at the horizon. And that, basically, is perspective. If you draw more lines towards you from the horizon, then you have a framework on which you can begin constructing two-dimensional representations of three-dimensional objects. The more you do it, the more practiced you become. And the more natural perspective comes to you. And the more naturally it becomes part of your artist's toolbox, and your viewpoint becomes a major part of your personal style. Best of all, like riding a bicycle, you won't even have to think about it. So if you want to get good at drawing and art, then you need to put in the work and learn some of the tricks of the trade, like perspective.